Hello and welcome to Random Fandom FC, the podcast dedicated to understanding how you fell in love with your team, your highest highs, your lowest low, and anything else I should know. We'll also take a little look at some of your favourite stories along the ways, favourite players, and then we'll take a look ahead at the upcoming game and make a prediction and see if we can nail it. I'm Rob, an Arsenal fan living in the States, and I'll be your host. Okay, last week we had Renato on. He's a fan of Universitario from Peru. We were predicting the game. Did make a slight mistake. We were supposed to be doing today's game, but I didn't realize it was a late kickoff. And I want to get the pod published today. We'll take a look at the game against Lima, the big rivals. It was an away game. Lima had a man sent off after 16 minutes. So things are looking good for Universitario. However, on the 45th minute, they went 1-0 down. Kevin Cuevedo scored for Lima to give them a 1-0 lead heading into the break. Kept on going, lots of yellow cards. I guess that's right for this kind of derby. And then right at the death, 94th minute, Jose Rivera ties it up 1-1. I guess the type of draw that feels like a win. Hey, Renato. So that was fun learning about a new team from a new country that I knew nothing about before. So really appreciate you coming on and sharing that, Renato. It was great. But now we need to turn our attention to this week's guest. Well, we've had the red side of Manchester represented, so I wonder who we have this week. So, who are you and who do you support?
Hi there, I'm Chris. I'm from Manchester, and naturally, being from Manchester, I support Man City.
Hey, well, we had Tony on about 10 episodes ago to represent the red half of Manchester, so we're just bringing balance to the force now by representing the blue half of Manchester. So, you're going to have to do yourself your side of the city proud now because he was on here talking it big about that Champions League 1999. So we're expecting some good stories here, Chris.
That's no problem. We've surpassed that anyway, so that's a dim and distant past. It's typical of a Red fan, right?
So, when did you discover City? When was it that you kind of fell in love with the team? Talk us through kind of your origin story of supporting City.
Right. Okay. So I got introduced to Man City through my dad. So he took me to a game when I was certainly before when I was in my sort of very early years. I don't remember too much about it, but it was when City were playing at Main Road, so the old stadium. So going back quite a bit. That was the first time. That's the first memory I have of sort of following Man City and supporting Man City, and it would have been at the time, right, when they had fallen from sort of grace and were on lean time, shall we say. So yeah, that's how I got into Man City, was through my dad taking me to see a game. I can't remember who it was they played, but I remember going to the ground, the old Main Road ground, and then followed them ever since. And because I started supporting them when they were not a great team, I was always quite sort of attracted to supporting the underdog, which City were back in the day, right?
Yeah, I mean, we'll come to that later. It'll be interesting because I think definitely for a team like City, probably Chelsea as well when they had their buyout, there are fans that supported pre the buyout and remember, if you like, the good old or bad old days, depending on how you want to look at it. And then we'll obviously have been exposed to life on the other side of the coin where success followed and all this kind of good stuff. It'd be interesting to see your dynamic as kind of City cross that line between cheering for the underdog and almost kind of expecting silverware every single year. But we'll get to that. One of the things I like to sort of drill into, because it's been the same for a lot of people that have come on, is people have that first game memory, don't really remember it, but know that's the time they started supporting it. What kind of season is the first one that really sort of you remember that you were kind of all in and you were watching the results?
So I think, yeah, so my sort of next memory, obviously between that first game and my next memory, I say obviously, I did follow the team, right? And like all kids, you used to be able to collect football sticker books, okay, if your team's right. So I remember doing that, and obviously, sort of wanting to collect all of the Man City team stickers. But the next game I remember would have been the 1981 FA Cup final with Tottenham because they, up until that point they hadn't really done anything, and getting to the FA Cup final was like a massive deal, for Man City back then. So that was my next memory of sort of from first supporting them to like a sort of major event. And it was quite emotional, I'm not gonna lie. It did bring me to tears because if you remember, it ended up being a draw in the first game, didn't it? Because back then, if it was a draw, you played a second game, and it was in the second game that they eventually lost out to Ricky Villa.
Oh, yeah, 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 of course. So actually, this is a nice segue because this might be it, it might not be it. But after kind of exploring the origin story, we like to dig into the negative memories for a minute before I bring you back up again, which is what's your lowest low as a Man City fan? Is it that final, or have you had another one that really sticks out as a gut punch for you?
Look, I'm gonna sort of stick to that one, right? Because even that, back then, 1981, I'd have been 11 years old, give or take, right? So I was quite young then. I'd already sort of, built up quite a sort of affinity with the team because, because they were an underdog, and and then to see them get all the way to the FA Cup final and to lose the way that they did was heartbreaking. I know that since then they've had some real sort of up and down moments. Obviously, borderline catastrophic, right? But for me personally, that FA Cup final sticks in my head and in my heart as being really difficult, and emotional as well. So, and I can, even now I can sort of remember the game and basically remember how we were broken by Argentinian brilliance.
You said it's personal, and that's exactly what it is. I could have another 10 City fans on, and they'll all pick different lowest lows, whether it's one of your relegations or whatever it might be. So I
Oh,
think
absolutely,
that's
yeah.
absolutely right. It's just a personal thing. So okay, let's leave the bad memories behind, Chris. Let's move into to highest highs. Now, I don't even know if I should ask you if you want to split this between pre-buyout and post-buyout because you've got two completely different sides of your fandom. It's quite bizarre, actually.
So if we're talking like so that was like lowest low for me, right? So what would be highest high? I have to say, and I know again people will have different opinions, right, depending on who you ask. For me, if you obviously remember the 2012 season where they won the Premier League for the first time, okay, and it was on a knife edge, wasn't it? In the last game of the season, United thought they'd won it. I think they beat Sunderland like 2-0, I think it was. And City all they had to do was beat QPR, didn't they? Home game, beat QPR. QPR were already down, if I remember rightly. And it should have been a foregone conclusion even before the start of the game. But you ask any City fan, you take nothing for granted, right? And maybe, less so now, but certainly back in those days, you took nothing for granted. But to see that game, the way it sort of panned out, I would honestly, I know they've won the treble since then, and they've won numerous, Premier Leagues. But the way that game pivoted backwards and forwards is unbelievable, right? Going from I think went to 1-0 up to and then going to 2-1 down to then bring it level to 2-2, I think on like 90 minutes, give or take, and then to win it at the very end with the Aguero goal in the dying seconds. It was just unbelievable. I mean, I'm thinking about it now, and it's making me laugh because it was just an amazing moment as a Man City fan to not only win the Premier League for the first time in the way that we did it, i.e., snatching a victory from the jaws of defeat, but to also deny Man United at the same time, and then to see because the cameras were sort of flipping between the Etihad and Sunderland's ground, which is where Man United were playing, to see the reactions of the players was just incredible. Honestly, what a moment! I defy anybody to sort of come up with a better sort of euphoria moment than that.
Well, I was gonna just chip in with mine because there's a lot of synergies between kind of my highest high and yours there. It's the same thing. Last day of the season. It's just instead of the two games being separated, Arsenal were playing Liverpool on the last day of the season and had to beat them by two clear goals to win the league, and we
Yeah,
won it in stoppage time and Michael Thomas. So I think everything you went through with the Aguero goal is what I went through with the Michael Thomas, and just watching you beam and smile as you were recounting that story is just making me think of that same moment that I was as well. Because you go from being at the depths of it's all done, we're not going to win it. You can't even come much closer than this. And then in one striker shot at goal, and suddenly you're just in cloud nine. It's yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what it is, right? It is you're expecting the Premier League to have gone because because you're too old out. You're sorry, it's too all time's out. As a City fan, it's done. We've missed the opportunity. It's gone, and so it's that sort of emotional swing from accepting that it's over to it actually not being over. And I think the commentary as well on it was incredible, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, the Aguero shout. He's like
Yeah, yeah.
it's almost like a South American commentator when that goal goes in. It's
For a South American commentator for a South American striker. I mean,
exactly.
I mean, Aguero is a legend for Man City because of because of what he's done for the club. Starting with winning that first Premier League for the team and for the club. Amazing, just amazing moment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we normally segue at this point to start talking about favorite players of yesteryear and looking at the current squad. But just because this is a little bit different, I do want to sort of just zero in on the pre and the post buyout because, like you say, I remember growing up that for me, Manchester City were a yo-yo team. They were, as I was kind of really getting into it, late 80s, they were kind of in Division Two, then they came up to Division One, then they were back again, then they were back for Division One in the formation of the Premier League. They'd kind of been up and down a few times. I think they dropped a couple of rungs of the ladder down before they started coming back up again. So you've seen so many promotions and relegations that any fan that started supporting them from probably about 2008 onwards just can't even comprehend. Because since you got bought out and had the investment, like fifth, I think, is like one of the worst positions you've ever been in. And in that run, you've got one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight Premier Leagues and three runners up. I mean, it's just night and day, especially for someone like you that supported them for, say, a couple of decades before this happened. What's that like going through that revolution?
Um, I'll tell you what it's like because I can remember supporting City when they were that yo-yo team. I remember that there was there was a sort of there's a film called Sliding Doors, okay, which is all about sort of pivotal moments in time where sort of your future flips from one script to another, and that's true for Man City as well. And it goes back to when they dropped down to Division Two playoff final to get promotion back up to Division Three, I beg your pardon, right? So it was Division Three. So it was a playoff final to get back up to Division Two, okay. Whereas Division One would have been what is now the Premier League, right? And they were playing Gillingham in a playoff final. And again, they were classic Man City, right? I think they were 2-0 down against Gillingham. And in the last I think last few minutes of the game, they'd scored two goals to bring it level, which then brought it to extra time and they won. I think they won it in extra time, 3-2. And it was that was the game that then basically started the rise back up to the first division, then into the Premier League, and it kind of that was a kind of the end of the yo-yo days, right? And I bring that up because that's that is the moment that sort of a lot of City fans will recognize is the turning point in it from the old yo-yo club to what you now see. And then obviously since then there's been a takeover, right, which has pumped in, the crazy amounts of money into the club. But that is the pivotal moment. And prior to that, I used to enjoy watching Man City playing in what was the second division, right? And I enjoyed it, right? Because they weren't good enough for the first division, the old first division, but they were for the second division. And so they used to sort of, hammer quite a few teams. So
Yeah.
it was quite enjoyable to watch.
I just googled that playoff final because I just wanted to sort of check it. Yeah, you're right. I don't remember the player Horlock, but he made it 2-1 to City in the 90th minute, and the man, the myth, the legend, Paul Dickoff made it 2-2 in the 95th minute. It was 5 out of 5 minutes of stoppage time, which you didn't even get back then. I mean, these days we get like 8 minutes of stoppage time and don't even think
Yeah,
about it, but five was a
yeah.
lot back then. And yeah, your memory is slightly faded. You were close on the score, but it was 3-1 on penalties. Went all the way to penalties in the end. Yeah.
Okay, I beg your pardon.
No, no, that's fine. So what you're basically saying is, had they not won that player final and stayed down a division, there's a chance they don't even make their way back up to the top and become a viable option for the takeover money in the end. Say would have picked someone else to invest in.
Well, I think it was a case that they actually wouldn't survive as a football club because, because they were an old first division club, playing in two leagues below, financially, not viable. So, securing that sort of promotion back up to the second division, was crucial. So I think that's the reason why that's a pivotal moment, right? Is because they may not have existed as a club had they not secured that promotion. They could not have afforded to spend. I think they spent a season in that old division right before they got promoted. So that's why that is important, right?
Yeah.
The takeover business. There's I think there's all kinds of stories as to how the Abu Dhabi Investment Group were persuaded to invest in City, because I think they were looking at other teams as well. But yeah, you got to go back to I think you got to go back to that Gillingham game, right? And then so comparing old with new, yeah, like I say, I used to enjoy watching City playing in what is now the first division because the games are much more entertaining not invariably, but you always felt that City had a decent chance of winning a game, whereas in when they were in the old first division, more often than not, you were getting beaten. You were playing United as well, and that was, more often than not, you weren't coming out top trumps there. So it wasn't always a great experience. And in those yo-yo days, you were always flirting with relegation. So actually playing in the second division actually made more sense, was much more enjoyable. And then since the takeover, obviously things have changed massively, haven't they? People just expect now for City to win. Obviously, this season's a bit different, but there's that expectation that City will always roll over teams. And they have done. I'm going to be honest, right? It might be a bit controversial. It does get a bit boring watching your team winning over time.
Oh
Because again, going back to supporting the underdog, right? It doesn't play to that narrative, does it?
no, no, true. I mean, so what you're saying is you've got a little bit too drunk on success, and it's difficult to get the same high now. It's
Do you know what? I think that's true. I don't think that's just me saying that. I reckon that surely that must be true for a lot of football fans, not just for City fans. If you're winning all the time, doesn't it numb the effect, the euphoria?
I've never been lucky or unlucky enough to ever get in any. Like we had the early days of Wenger where things were great and we won a couple of doubles and it was great, but never really kind of took hold and had one of those periods of like a Manchester United, a Chelsea, or a City where they've kind of gone on runs and sort of just won over and over and over again. So, I pine for the day where I get sick of success, but there we are. Okay, so if we kind of look back across your fandom, who are some of the names that come to mind of players that you just knew were going to do something? Well, I was going to say do something special, but then again, we had Renato on last week, who was a Universitario from Peru fan. Actually, his favourite isn't the flamboyant striker or winger. He just loves a classic centre midfielder who sticks his foot in and wins a challenge. So, what floats your boat, Chris? What's your kind of favourite players down the years?
So I tend to sort of like the players that can create nothing something out of nothing, right? So I'm thinking of the likes of I don't know if you remember there were players called Ali Benalbi, Isle Berkovic as well. So these are that pre sort of pre sort of takeover players. So those, those kind of players were they were special players for Man City, right? And they were able to sort of, produce something out of absolutely nothing. I've always got a bit of a soft spot for those kind of players. And then if I go, I know I can go further back in time, right? So when I sort of first started supporting City, you had the likes of Peter Barnes playing and Asa Hartford and Joe Corrigan in goal. And they were, I always thought they were sort of amazing players. I don't, I don't know how they would necessarily compare to now, but yeah, those are sort of, I've got quite a soft spot in my head for those kind of players. And then if I sort of switch to, sort of post takeover, obviously you got the likes of Aguero in there, right? Who just, was scoring some amazing goals. So it's hard to, it's hard to ignore players like Aguero or a Silva, because they were just so creative.
Well, what about the man who's leaving at the end of the year with old Mr. De Bruyne?
Yeah, I know. So again, he's been a tremendous player for City. I had no idea why Chelsea ever got rid of him or Mourinho. De Bruyne, yeah, he's been an amazing player for Man City. You can't but admire, what he's brought to the team and how good he's been. He's 34 now, I think. I think it is time, for him to sort of move on and go and find out what the next chapter is. But yeah, he's been a fantastic servant for Man City.
Yeah, yeah. He's a phenomenal player, but like you say, time catches up with every player every now and again, and you can't just keep a player around for sentimental reasons. So it probably is about time he moves on. I mean, I'm surprised we haven't mentioned feed the goat and he will score. I mean, Sean Goater,
Ah,
come on.
yeah. So I beg your pardon. Yeah, so I'd forgotten about Sean Goater. Yeah, Sean Goater from Bermuda. Yeah, he'd been such an ungamely player, right? But had an unerring ability to just score
I
goals.
was just looking up Man City player list, right? And it says that he has, in all competitions between 1998 and 2003, he had 212 appearances for you and scored 103 goals. It's like every other game he scores. It's that's crazy. It puts him right up there in terms of goal ratio. I mean, not probably anywhere near certain Mr. Haaland at the moment, who probably scores more than he plays, but
Haaland is a good one, isn't he? He's a goal machine, but he can be really frustrating to watch as well.
he's an old-fashioned striker. Like now, this does make me feel old saying this, but he's an old-fashioned striker who doesn't really care about any of this ticky-taka, taking touches, dribbling or beating people, and everyone sort of gives him a bit of grief for, oh, he only had 5 touches in the opposition's penalty area this game. It's like, yeah, and 4 of them were goals. He's that classic centre forward that plays inside the 18-yard box, maybe even plays inside the 6-yard box, and just knows where to be at the right time. It's not luck, but the ball always falls to him. People say, oh, yeah, but he's got De Bruyne putting it in or Silva putting it in. Yeah, so did a lot of strikers that turned up at Man City and didn't have these numbers. So it just reminds me, I think I might have said on a previous pod, it's the old Argentinian striker, Batistuta. Haaland just reminds me of him. He's just big, hard to knock off the ball, and knows exactly where the goal is.
So exactly, yeah. So he's not just a box player, is he though? Is he can, if you give him the ball, he'll run with it and he'll run and he'll invariably put it in the back of the net. And he'll hold off the challenges as well. So he's, like you say, he's really strong on the ball. But he is massive, isn't he? He's huge.
Well, like you say, okay, if you were to compare I'm going to give you 2 strikers, both of them set away from the halfway line, and they both end up scoring a goal. And if you visualize it in your head, if one of them is Thierry Henry and one of them is Haaland, I can almost visualize the difference between the 2 goals. Thierry Henry takes off and no one gets near him because he's just lightning quick and away he goes. Haaland has got about 4 players hanging off him because he's not the fastest player in the world, but he's just so strong. He's running with like 3 people on each shoulder or
No,
something.
exactly. I could just picture that now. Yeah, they're literally climbing all over him, and he just carries on. That's a Norwegian for you.
Yeah, that's exactly. Norwegian blood. Right, okay. Now we've taken me way off topic here. Okay, so one of the things we then do is kind of look forward to the next game. So this will go out. We're recording it midweek Wednesday. It's going to go out this weekend. So if I fast forward to the following weekend, it is Saturday, the 19th of April, and you are away to the mighty Everton. You've got to fancy your chances away at Everton, surely.
Short answer, no. City are terrible this season. That's why they're in fifth. Six, sorry, six. That's where they're in six. Yeah, they're so inconsistent. You just don't know what, I mean, well, you do, you kind of do know what you're going to get at the moment, which is, you know, a draw at best, maybe.
Why do you think that is? Have the opposition sussed them out? Has Pep not got another way to go? Because you don't, right, on paper, when you see the City team line up, you're like, okay, we know what's going to happen here. Lots of possession and probably lots of goals. But for whatever reason, those same players are not creating those same fluid triangles and movement and goals that we've seen them do for the past few years. Is it just, I don't know. What do you see as this as a fan?
So they've lost one crucial player, haven't they, from the start of the season? So Rodri has not played all season, and I dare I say it, that has been the big difference, right? I don't know why they've not sort of tried to replace him, but yeah, without Rodri, they are not the same team. And if you look at the stats, say for last season, the games that he didn't play, the stats will support that as well. So when Rodri's not playing, the team do not play well.
I've seen the kind of the analysis on that where they say like in terms of the coverage of the defense or the fulcrum between defense and attack and sniffing out danger before he was Pep always likes to win the ball back really really quickly to kind of box people into their own half, and apparently he's one of the people that will anticipate where the when the opposition tried to get out of jail, he was the one that was winning the vast majority of the turnovers to get you guys back on the attack again. So while I get it, I also find it so bizarre that a team with almost the embarrassment of riches, where you've almost got two full first team squads, where you look at the substitutes bench sometime and you're just like, oh my gosh, how are we going to fight against this team where they've got like an entire second string? I can't believe that you seem to be, I'm being exaggerating here maybe, but a one man team. That you take that one person out and suddenly you're sixth. It just it confuses me as a fan. It really does.
We've got a team full of average players.
I wish.
No, I'm joking, obviously. It's, you've asked a question because it's hard to explain, right? I've obviously watched the team this season as well. They are just so disjointed, and whether it's because other teams have found them out, maybe there's an element of that, but you don't see. I mean, look at Liverpool and how they've changed managers, haven't they? So they've got a new manager, Arne Slot, coming at the beginning of the season. They've just carried on from where the previous manager left off. There've been some team changes, but they're still cruising along. So I don't necessarily think it's because teams have found City out, because they haven't found Liverpool out, right? So I'm not necessarily buying that. I think it's because the team are just not performing. And it would be unfair to blame it on one player, right? Who's not playing Rodri. But he does make a big difference to the team.
Is it, dare I say, that Pepper's squeezed everything he can squeeze out of this particular brand of football, and it's time for either him to reinvent the squad and reinvent his playing style, or even, dare I say, him to go? Because you've had, and this isn't like just an anti-Pep thing, but you've been phenomenal, like 7 titles, whatever it was in a decade. It's you. I mean, the reaches a saturation point. Ferguson couldn't reinvent the United team over and over and over again. He did a brilliant job of doing it. Chelsea had a run at the beginning where they kept kind of reinventing the squad, but all eras eventually come to an end. So do you think we're at that tipping point in City, or is this just a blip? And then come this time next year, we'll be looking, at City at the sharp end of the table again and going, we'll just write that one off to experience.
Well, we don't know, do we? That's the thing. We don't know. He's got another season, hasn't he, Pep? Because he signed an extension. You would you would argue that if another season like this season, that's the end, isn't it? Really. You can't really go off. You can't just go off on one season, because it might just be a blip, right? So we nobody's going to know until next season. And if next season is I'm going to say as bad as this season, in the great scheme of things, as long as the team make Champions League football, that will be the priority.
So come on then, what's your prediction for the Everton game?
I think City will. It'll be a draw, and it'll be 2-2, I think.
Yeah, I think I got to go with you. I'm gonna go for a draw as well. You got 2-2. I've got 1-1. We'll see how we get on next episode. Time has caught up with us here, Chris. Thank you so much for coming on and representing the blue half of Manchester.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That's all of Manchester covered now. I'm looking for anybody else to come on, like we had Peru last week. So literally any club across the country or the world is fair game. So I will wrap this one up. Hope to see some requests from some more fans out there to come and join me, just like Chris did. So one last time, thank you very much for joining me today, Chris.
No, you're welcome.